Shalom. Today, February 5th, 2024, Parshat Mishpatim. Mishpatim, first Parsha after the revelation at Sinai. Uh, Difficult Parsha, I think, to explore, uh, precisely because I'm not exactly in the mood yet to get into the legal literature, the covenant code, what to do with your male and female slave, etc., and the rules. It depends on what your frame of mind is when you are reading this. Whether you want to get into this legal territory, or whether or not you want to be more imaginative. And I'm electing, for everyone's pleasure, a more imaginative um, uh, section of the Parsha uh, that is often skipped over, and skipped over, I think, for good reason. The good reason is because I don't think it plays a significant role in our imagination, at least in the normative way that we understand the Torah. Uh, and I think because also, as we'll see, it has to do with things that are a little controversial, a little difficult to understand, and that's just good. So we got a thumbs up there from Ruth, and now we're going to go with the text here. Okay. And this is and we're going to do this in a few ways. We're going to do this in a classic biblical textual analysis way, and we're going to do this in a more I don't know, imaginative way. The text here is uh, after the covenant code, chapters 21, 22, beginning of 23. We get in chapter 23, verse 20, a very interesting set of verses. Hine anochi sholeach malach lefanecha, lishmorcha badarech, ve'lahaviacha el hamakom asher achinoti. Here, I am sending a messenger before you to care for you on the way, to bring you to the place that I have prepared. Okay, so already we are in a kind of frame here reading this. This is, I mean, what do you mean, a messenger? What's going on here? Who's leading us? What what is being said here? Okay, and I continue. Take care in his presence and hearken to his voice, and do not be rebellious against him, for he is not able to bear your transgressing, for my name is with him. This is really interesting. Ki shmi bikirbo, my name is with him. Rather, hearken to his voice, and do all that I speak, and I will be an enemy to your enemies, and I will be an adversary to your adversaries. I'm going to stop for a second on that verse and go like, what does that sound like? I'm not going to dwell on that, but it's almost the inverse of the Abrahamic promise, right? I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. Okay, so if you listen to this messenger, I'll protect you. I will be an enemy to your enemies. I'll fight for you. I'll be an adversary to your adversaries. When my messenger goes before you and brings you to the Amorite, the Hittite, the Perizzite, the Canaanite, the Hivite, and the Jebusite, I will cause them to be effaced. You're not to bow down to their gods. You're not to serve them. You're not to do according to what they do. Rather, you are to tear down, to smash, smash their standing stones. You're to serve God, your God, and you will give blessing. He will give blessing to your food and your water, and I will remove sickness amongst you. There will be no miscarrier or barren one in your land, and the number of days I will make full. My terror I will send on before you. I will throw into panic the peoples among whom you came, and I will give all your enemies to you by the neck. I will send despair on before you, so that it drives out the Hivite, the Canaanite, and the Hittite from before you. I will not drive them out from before you in 1 year, lest the land become desolate and the wildlife of the field become many against you. Little by little, I will drive them out. Will I drive them out from before you until you have borne fruit and inherited the land? So I'm just gonna. It's a long passage. I'm just gonna go over it again. Sending before you a messenger. Take care in his presence. Hearken to his voice. Goes before you. He will cause them to be effaced. You are to serve God. There will be no miscarrier, no barren one. My terror I will send despair before them. I will drive them out. I will make your territory, from the Sea of Reeds to the Sea of Philistines, from the wilderness river. I missed that part. I will give your land the settled folk in the land. You are not to cut them or with their gods any covenant. You are not to stay in your land, lest they cause you sin. Indeed, you will serve their gods, and there will be a snare unto you. Okay? So the passage then is a passage that is talking. At first, I'm going to have this like the headline, and I see the hand up. The headline is, I'm sending something before you, and it's going to protect you. And it's going to protect you from things. And that, I think that there's something there. I have this my own personal practice in reading the Bible and studying the Bible and studying the Torah and preparing things like this is when something elicits a curiosity in you, go there, like follow that magnetic pull. And so I'm asking, like, what is it about that? And it's a personal question to me. But before I get that, I'm going to have Marlene. Marlene, go ahead.
Why do you think there's a change in the person that's telling the story? It goes from I will to he will.
Yeah, good question. And I'm not going to give you a better answer than to say that this is not uncommon in the text. The text will shift, from time to time like this. Even the Ten Commandments, has that shift also. Um, and other than to say that the text is a composite text too, there may be evidence of that. But I mean, you know, without getting too bogged down in that question, we all talk that way. This is the Torah speaks in a language that is accessible to us, and is shifting all the time like that. Okay. Did you have another question or no? Okay. Well, what do you make of that? My first question to you is, when there is this great scene at Mount Sinai, which we've talked about in the sense that it's the scene where God, reveals to the people. It's a volcano. It's terrifying. The people are scared of God, and they tremble and they back away, and they want Moses to intercede for them. They want Moses to speak to them. And there are a lot of issues here with how they're going to proceed and how they're going to be guarded and protected. The classic view that we all have is that, and it's the view that the Torah presents initially, which is there's a cloud of fire, there's a pillar of fire by day, a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. Okay. And that I argued at the splitting of the sea that the pillar of cloud kind of encloses them, becomes a force field around them as they move. And that is the protection. And the pillar of cloud is a miraculous device that acts basically, without being too science fiction here, it acts like a force field. It's a protecting, barrier against both enemies, physical enemies and elemental elements. So there's a sense that the people are going through protected, and yet, of course, the people, as we know, as we get into the book of Numbers, they'll face enemies. We've already faced the enemy of Amalek. Amalek attacked them. There was no protection there when they were attacked. They had to be fended off by a war. And so the whole notion that there's a divine layer of protection is somewhat problematic. It's a question. And what does that look like, and how does that appear, and how does that figure into the imagination? I think these are really critical questions, and that's what's motivating me to think about them, both in terms of this as in literature and this in the imagination. So I'm going to go to John and then Marlene. Go, or no?
Well, you asked, what do we make of this?
Yes.
And my question is, what do you need a messenger? You have Moses.
There you go. So good question. And that question kind of supplies one of the interpretive strategies here, which is the rabbis are basically saying, or what, there is a school of thought here that said the messenger is Moses. It identifies it as Moses. And we'll see that's a very rationalist answer to a question that is very threatening to rationalists, right? Because the rational imagination has difficulty with magic, and here where we're going with this is that this little verse, this little passage here, comes right up to the boundary of your magical imagination. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but it's not. It's what is in our normal rational frame of the world, we have some difficulty with the idea that there may be, magic and what angels all together. What's going on here? This is all irrational in some way. Okay, but I go ahead, Marlene. You have a question or no? Yeah.
Are we then to infer that other than, well, but beside the fact that we didn't have any protection when the Amalekites came, so now we could infer that when Moses talks to us, we could have the chachmas, the smarts, and the ability to ward off, as opposed to some protection that's going to come along and save us.
If I'm understanding your question, it's to what do we attribute our protective ability? Do we attribute it to force, physical force, and our ability to protect ourselves, or do we attribute it to a spiritual force? And it's so tempting, of course, to make the connections to events of the day. How we're fighting a war. There's a war that's going on, and in a war that is being fought, the war is being fought on several planes simultaneously, including, of course, one of what is the military tactical and strategic, what are the assets, and how do you fight a war militarily, and how do you fight a war spiritually? And that is to say, how are you?
I'm more to fill in.
Well, okay, so how exactly, how do you fortify yourself spiritually? We have verses, we have a whole catalog of verses in Tanakh that say Elev Arechav, Elev Asusim, these fight by chariots and horses, V'anachnu b'shem Adonai, and we fight with the name of the Lord. Yeah, so the name of the Lord is really good, but an AK-47 is a little better. Merkava tank, and so you wonder, are you going to, will you be protected only if you have the name of the Lord? Well, not if you're aligned against people with RPGs. The name of the Lord will fortify you spiritually for sure, but a Merkava tank will be much more effective. Go ahead, Ruth.
Okay, so I'm a little confused because in the Hebrew text, it doesn't say shaliach, it says malach. And when John said, what do they need a messenger for? They have Moses, and that's right, except Moses isn't there an inference here that this is non-human intervention? It's not Moses. It says malach. A malach is not a regular person.
Well, so here we're going to go to the dictionary and go to meaning one and meaning two.
Okay.
And that will help me segue into the next part of this, which is, where else do we have this idea of malach? And in truth, here's my verse, okay? And I call this an exercise in biblical interpretation, sending messengers, sending angels. You know, malach and messenger and angel, it's the same word, malach, okay? You know, but what is a divine and what is a, you know, it's not exactly clear. So that's the translation of the verse. But where else do you have this idea? Okay, so one of the reasons why I gravitated to this verse is because it is virtually the same as the last most significant verse in the prophetic Bible. That is to say, everything before the collection of the writings, okay, is, I'll say it much more precisely. The, the last verse of the biblical era is chapter 3, Malachi, okay? The last verse of the prophets, okay? It's really the second last verse, but it's really, as far as I'm concerned, the most important verse at the end, where he says, as we read on the Haftorah of Passover, Hinei anochi sholech lachem et Eliyah hanavi, lifnei bo yom Adonai hagadol v'hanora. Here I am sending the prophet to you, Elijah to you, before the coming of the awesome, fearful day. I didn't highlight it, but you get it, okay? I'm going to highlight, you know, all the connections here, right? Here I am, Hinei anochi sholech, Hinei anochi sholech, okay? So you have to ask yourself the question, which I have to ask myself, which is, so Malachi is writing this with, or he's saying this, is he saying this with Exodus in front of him? Or is he saying this with Exodus in his ear or in his memory? Okay. I'm convinced, with no other evidence other than it's one other occurrence of this in the Bible, that this is common enough, or this is imprinted enough in his imagination to make the connection. If I'm reading this and I'm going, and of course I'm not the first one to make this connection. The rabbis already made this connection in Midrash. Midrash, it's a very complicated Midrash, which I'm not bringing here, but you know, it's like, if I can hear it, you know, then surely the rabbis heard it, you know, centuries ago, and of course they did. They made the connection. The connection is, Hinei anochi sholech, hinei anochi sholech. I am sending, I'm sending. The first I am sending to you in this sense is Moses, or God, speaking to Israel, speaking to Moses, saying, I'm sending before you a guardian, a malach lefanecha li shmorcha, to guard you badarech, on the way. To guard you on the way and to bring you, prepare you on the way to the place where I have bringing you. And Malachi is saying, and so, you know, that, which one is more, gives you, you know, creates more imagination for you, the first one or the second one? Behold, I'm going to send to you Elijah the prophet before the great day of the Lord, the great and fearful day of God. Okay. Well, if you are someone who has a Seder, okay, which we all do, and we all sit at the Seder and, you know, have the Elijah's cup there, and we were reciting at the point of Elijah's cup, Eliyahu Hanavi, et tishbi, da 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 da, Eliyahu Agiladi bimerabi amenu yavo eleinu. May he come speedily. Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben, with the Messiah, son of David. This is the messianic impulse. This is the messianic yearning. Okay. The messianic yearning, which is the yearning for redemption, the yearning for return from exile, the yearning for the miracle of redemption that will, you know, bring us out of the humiliation and the suffering and the exile, the malaise, everything that ills humanity, and of course the Jewish people. And that is a great and terrible day, the day of reckoning, the day of the Messiah, okay? And or the day of an ultimate, and to the extent that this is worked out in Malachi, we really don't know, but he is pointing to some unidentified future where God will be revealed again, or God, something will happen, the redemption. And of course, religious life is organized around that pole. That is to say, we have redemption in the Exodus, and we will have a redemption in the future. And that's one elegant way of explaining, what we're waiting for, or why there's, a lot of suffering. Go ahead, Ilana.
I just want to add something about Malachim.
Yes.
In Sulam Yaakov,
Yes.
המלאכים
עולים ויורדים.
עולים ויורדים.
So
עולים ויורדים או יורדים עולים ויורדים.
עולים ויורדים. They're going up and coming down. And so we have a few examples. I'm going to show you a few examples in a second of angels that have various roles. Okay, I don't want to devote the class to angelology, but I'm asking a question, which is, to what extent this idea accompanies Judaism and becomes present, and to what extent we resonate with it, or not. And I go, I don't want to say, I go both ways on this. Okay. I think that's the way to be, because I'm teaching this, but I think that the way to be here is to understand this in an irrational way, a mystical way, a kind of magical way, and to kind of understand it in a rational way, which is this is ridiculous. Go ahead, Stanley.
So I'm just thinking that in the first passages, the redemption that's spoken of is really coming back or coming to the land.
Exactly.
This is very significant, and we regard it, in fact, being back in the land of Israel as a miracle after 2,000 years, as a form of redemption. But that's obviously not the final redemption. The final redemption then comes in the second passages with what we hope for, the coming of the Messiah, making the world, a perfect place, or whatever one can imagine. And certainly, as you say, which involves more imagination, the second certainly does, more so than the first.
Well, I would say also, that Messianism is very tempting, and it's also very dangerous. Look, we are in a moment of real peril, a real terror, and real fear and anxiety. And one way out of this is magical thinking, or kind of what I would call this messianic thinking, which is that we need to orchestrate a salvation through extraordinary means, and damn the world, damn everything, damn whatever. And that can be very dangerous. And this tension exists within Judaism altogether. The craving for redemption, the craving for immediate salvation, is something that you find not only in religious life, but it's something that you find in secular life. Utopian thinking, right? Shalom achshav. I don't want to be too political, but peace now, or to say, bring the, and it's so painful to think about it, but it's, the hostages now, and I don't blame, the families for saying this. We want them now. We want them yesterday. We want them, and it's so painful. The sense of extraordinary torture that people are experiencing through that. Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't any one of us say those things in the same way if it were our loved one? Absolutely. Okay. And that's the point. The point is that you say it, but it is so removed from a reality in which there are so many difficulties that need to be accomplished. You can't, on the one hand, and here we all move into this world, and I, freely admit that we're all part of this world. I feel we move into this world where the things that we can say, the prayers that we can say, the pledges, the mitzvot, that we want to shift reality so that the people will redeem. Never mind the hostage. I mean, every single one of us has experienced this in the presence of a loved one who is suffering an illness, and God forbid, a terminal illness, where we want a miracle, we want something, we want to be saying. I've had this conversation. It's a very painful conversation, as a rabbi. Of course, people say, Rabbi, I'm praying, nothing is happening. I'm praying, and I'm saying Amisha Ber, I want you to do, I want you to say this, and of course, I want to say, first of all, I don't want to say, the answer, which is, well, we're praying, but God is just saying no. That doesn't mean anything, right? What I want to say is that it's not magic. And this is precisely our point. We are tempted to move into a worldview where we want this, we imagine it, and we need the succor and the salvation and the comfort of the talismanic ritual to enable us to traverse what is so unbearably painful and unbearably impossible to live with. Stanley, go ahead.
No, I entirely agree with you. I like the way you put it, namely that there's a real danger in it. I mean, we know that the Christians see the Messiah as having come in the form of Jesus, and we don't accept that, of course, for obvious reasons. But in addition, danger is in the current Chabad, seeing Rabbi Schneerson as the embodiment of the Messiah. I mean, these are, I think, dangerous.
They're dangerous,
Ideas.
and it's a tendency within Judaism. It's not only in Chabad. I mean, it's Chabad. Of course, there's a whole section of Chabad that latched on to him, and they're believers, and in belief and in radical belief, and in there's not much rational argument. There's not much discussion. Look, this is you go to radical Islam, and you don't have a messianic ideology, but you have a kind of apocalyptic ideology there that is more, and that you can't negotiate with, and that, of course, has brought tremendous peril to so many, and I think it remains one of the greatest perils in the world right now, especially if Iran has a nuclear weapon. That's just beyond peril for all of us. Okay, so these themes are hovering here, and it's interesting that this verse in Exodus, which is not apocalyptic, which is here and now, right now, you're in the desert, I'm going to send a messenger, becomes a kind of apocalyptic, not apocalyptic, but the end of days verse, the end of days trope. That is, I'm going to send you the messenger. Who's going to be the messenger? Elijah's going to be the messenger. Why is Elijah the messenger? Read Danny Matt's book. But why is Elijah the messenger? Elijah's the messenger because Elijah got taken up. And Elijah is the fiery prophet, the most charismatic of the prophets, really. And he goes through this kind of transformation that he will herald the redemption. And that's why he is present for us at the most terrifying moments in the Jewish life, namely the Seder, which is both a moment of remembrance, but also peril throughout history, and the Brit Milah, right? Which is a moment of danger. And every Saturday night at the end of Shabbat, Havdalah, we are singing Eliyahu Hanavi, a moment of anxiety, because we're leaving the cocoon of Shabbat, leaving the sanctuary of Shabbat, and we are entering the world again. We're entering real time. We're entering, imperfect world time, and therefore we're having Elijah here as an accompanying presence, or to use the expression that is kind of summoned here, which is a guardian angel. It's hard not to hear those words. Those are English words, and they're very Christian associated. But I mean, it's clear here that when it says Malach lefanecha lishmorcha badarech, it's an angel that guards you. And so you just have to have one shot of scotch to be coining guardian angel. Okay, you don't need a lot of poetic, ability to go from he is guarding you to guardian angel. Okay, and therefore we have this notion that we're gonna go around in a kind of protected zone. We're gonna be, that we're gonna have our force field with us that's gonna ward off enemies and all sorts of things, including some things that we're going to see in a second. But let's just do one more exercise here. Where else do we have this? And Ilana, you mentioned Yaakov and the Malachim, and those angels, by the way, function. I didn't put them here in this chart, but those angels in the dream function in a way as guardians. They are the Olim V'Yordimbo. We understand that they're at the boundary of the land simply to escort him beyond the land and to retrieve him. So they do, even though it doesn't say lishmorcha there, they function in that way. But here, when the servant, my favorite minor character, he says to, before he goes out on his journey to find Rebecca, Adonai Elohei Hashamayim asher lekachani mibeit avi v'eretz moladati asher diber li v'asher nishba li lemor lezarachai neten in eretz haknazah. This is God. This is, I'm sorry, Abraham speaking. Hu yishlach malacho lefanecha. He's reminding God. Abraham is reminding his servant that he will be guarded. God will protect you on your journey. Hu yishlach malacho lefanecha lekachta isha livni misham, and you'll be successful. Okay, which is, I'm just closing the screen for a second. I love the idea that Abraham is too old to go out himself to get the wife. Okay, and the fact that Isaac can't go himself to get the wife, I think, is a good section for psychotherapy. Okay, the fact that Abraham has to dispatch his servant to get the wife for Isaac, I think, is a great thing. And Abraham is like, putting his arm around him and saying, Eliezer, if, servant, you're going to be okay. You're going to be fine. God, who guarded me, took me, he will send his angel for you. And he will accompany you. He will take you there and bring you back and it'll make you successful. You're going to be great. Okay. Go out there and get him. That's what he's saying, Abraham to Eliezer. Okay. I'll give you another one. All right. This is Jacob before Asa. This is different. This is Ruth. This is human message. Vayishlach Yaakov malachim lefanav. Jacob sent messengers on ahead of him to Esav. Messengers to send a message. Okay, so the word malach is an angel, but it's also a messenger. It's a agent, but it's also a divine agent. Here, it's pretty clear to me that it's a human messenger. Okay, and then later on in the book of Shmot, we're going to see this. Go up from here, you and the people that brought you up from the land of Egypt, land which I swear to you, I will give to your seed. I will send a messenger. Will drive out the Canaanite, the Amorite. Similar to this verse here, with the idea that don't think it's a human messenger. I think this is a kind of marauding angel here, some kind of destroyer. too many examples in Joshua, Judges, and Samuel and Kings of lishlach malach, veishlach malachim, lots and lots of angels and messengers, etc. in those books. But my favorite one, which kind of gives us a way to segue a little bit, is Psalm 91. Psalm 91, really important psalm. We recite it on Shabbat several times. We recite it. It has a role in the Jewish funeral, which we'll talk about in a second. But in the era of the pandemic, if you dipped into websites or Zoom sessions of, very Haredi Orthodox people, they would say, one of the things you should do is recite Psalm 91. Recite Psalm 91. Because not only does it have things referring to a plague, but it has this verse, Ki malachav yitzaveh lach, Ki malachav yitzaveh lach, lishmorcha b'chol drachecha, for he will order his angels to guard you wherever you go. Okay, I get a lot of comfort even saying it now in class. Okay, Ki malachav yitzaveh lach lishmorcha b'chol drachecha. 7 words in that line. It's really important. Okay, I'm going to just do the whole psalm with you. This is Yoshev Besetel Yon Betzel Shaddai. So many of you recognize the psalm. O you who dwell in the shelter of the Most High and abide in the protection of Shaddai, I say of the Lord, my refuge and stronghold, my God in whom I trust, that he will save you from the fowler's trap, from the destructive plague, which is why we said it during the destructive plague, right? This was during a plague. We had coronavirus. He will cover you up with his pinions. You will find refuge under his wings. His fidelity is an encircling shield. You need not fear the terror by night or the arrow that flies by day, the plague, midever ba'ofel yaloch, the plague that stalks you in darkness, or the scourge that ravages at noon, miketev yachut zoraim. 1,000 may fall at your left side, 10,000 at your right, but it shall not reach you. Rak beinech David, you will see it with your own eyes and will witness the punishment of the wicked. Because you took the Lord, my refuge, the Most High, as your haven, no harm will befall you, no disease touch your tent. For he will order his angels to guard you wherever you go. They will carry you in their hands, lest you hurt your foot on a stone. You will tread on cubs and vipers. You will trample lions and asps. Because he is devoted to me, I will deliver him. I will keep him safe, for he knows my name. When he calls on me, I will answer him. I will be with him in distress. I will rescue him and make him honored. I will let him live to a ripe old age and show him my salvation. And when we recite that in the liturgy, repeat that line. I will let him live to a ripe old age, show him my salvation. So it's a great psalm, one of the great psalms. It's in my opinion, not as great as Psalm 23, but it's up there with your top 10, okay? In terms of where do you go for things to say in moments of dread and fear and pestilence and disease and things that are not explained? What are some things to say, okay? And recall in the pandemic early on, teaching the psalm and saying there's something here, by saying it, you are offering, I don't want to use the word an incantation, but if there's something close to that, I'll go there, which is that it's a protective amulet to recite in order to create in your imagination this sense of protection, force field. You are reciting something almost in a prophylactic, protective way that says, I want you near me to protect me. I'm calling out to you and you're answering me, and your angel will surround me and guard me as I go forward in this soup of disease and virus and suffering and enemies, they're going to protect me. And that's what I need from you right now. Yoshev b'seter, you who dwell in the secret of the Most High, machsil matzudati, you are my shelter and my fortress. You know, to guard me, you are protecting me. That's religion, folks. I'm saying this is a religious person. This is what religion does at its best. It offers you the ability and the ritual and the words to create around you the sense that God is present with you and that you're protected. And it's one little small step, baby step away from, trying to make that real magically, which is why things like this, verses like this from that psalm, appear in amulets and are written, they're encoded on bowls, and they were there to cover things up, and you put the the chamsa on your neck or in your door or whatever. Even the mezuzah, I love the mezuzah, and it's important to me, and it's important as a symbol, but one cannot completely complete, as I don't care how Maimonidean you are, you just can't strip away some of that aura beyond it, especially if you are aware of it. Go ahead, Ilana.
After reading all about Malachim and Shlichim, I think you have to try to become your own Malach.
Okay, very nice. That's very nice. And in a sense, that's where we could go with this as a modern person, okay? Because a modern person says, I want to be something, beyond just my human basic self. I need to be a little more divine. I need to be kinder. I need to be gentler. I need to be something that is more related to the divine. Go ahead, Stanley.
Well, I think the protection that we get is really not a physical protection. We know sometimes our prayers are answered, sometimes not, but at the very least, it gives us a greater ability to cope with these sort of slings and arrows. And that's how I understand it, really, in the
Yes,
prayers, I wonder what you
absolutely.
think. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, look, this is what religion does at its best, and we do it within a certain story, but all religions provide this, and that's why they arise. That's one of the reasons, of course, in addition to building community and to creating a way of life around people, but through prayer we establish our methodologies or our mechanisms for coping, you're a therapist, I'm a rabbi, and that's where it kind of connects, which is, it's not as if I'm going to sit down with someone and say to someone when they have a problem, here's what you need to recite. But often where the conversation goes is, what can I do, Rabbi? And I often say to people, look, you never know what's going to help. Certainly, think about these things. But is there anything I could say? Well, thank you for asking. Here are some things to say. Here are some things to keep in your mind. Here's a verse. Here's a psalm. Here's a word. I mentioned, last week, or 2 weeks ago, I keep in my pocket words where, you pick a word and you go like, this is a word. These are words that bring comfort, and they're words that in times that are difficult, they offer you just this kind of a ping of comfort, or a sense that you are bound, a sense that you are a relationship, or a sense that you are protected. And that's what spirituality is. That's what spiritual strength is, to know that you're not alone, and to know that despite whatever you're going through, it's not that you're going to be physically protected, but you're going to remain intact. Look, all the the experiences that people are having now, terrible, terrible, torturous experiences that people are having. The heartiness and their hardiness is rooted in what will keep them intact. And often it is a deep sense of self and a sense of self-understanding. And for many, of course, it will be a sense of their feeling of connectedness. It's so amazing, to listen to, the one or two hostages that I've seen, who have had interviews, and they're not, these are people that are not quote unquote believers. They're not, outwardly, the last people that you would identify as outwardly religious people, but they all said, I said this, I recited this, I said this, I did this, I thought, I'm going to die, I recited Shema Yisrael. And that's part of a cultural experience within Israeli society that is so deep. It's so deep that it offers, that kind of sense of protectedness. Okay. I want to go on for a second and show you some more things. Go ahead, Marlene, you have your hand up. Sorry.
The words that you give us are about our strength. The imruchi gaviyati.
Yes.
When we say Adon Olam, right? God is going to be with us. It gives me strength. But the words that we're reading are these angels that are coming to protect me. Not what I have to believe or do, but what's going to come to me. I find that a big disconnect.
Well,
The Psalms that you say that you love,
Yeah.
Esa Enai, I'm going to be connected, not God's going to come down and put this fence around me.
Well, so here I would advise you to have a glass of wine. No, seriously, and engage with it, engage in a conversation about it, certainly study it, and say, and to not take it literally, but to ask other kinds of questions, to elicit other questions with it, and to allow your soul to be guided by the curiosities that you have there. Look, the psalm works in the end because it speaks to a deep human need, which is the need for protection, the human need, the human expression of vulnerability. I'm vulnerable when there's a plague. I'm vulnerable when there's a pandemic. I am afraid. We lived through 3 years of that, and to a certain extent, we're still living through the vestiges of it now. Walk around the street, whenever you see someone in their car with a mask on, there's nobody around, and I go like, "What's going on?" And I know what it is. It's like I put my mask on, and I'm too lazy to take it off. Okay, but it's I'm living with dread. I'm living with dread that something out there that I can't see is going to infect me and debilitate me and even kill me. And that's terrible, terrible fear. And what do you do with that fear? Do you say to people, well, the fear is not rational? You can't say that. But you say, you got to cope. So how do you cope? Well, you could put a mask on, or you could watch yourself. You could vaccinate, of course, do all the things that we're being told to do, but you can also cope spiritually with it. And that's what these are about. And it's not that difficult, in my opinion, to go from the literal reading of this to a more metaphorical reading. Okay. I mentioned before that the psalm plays a role in Judaism. Of course, it's a role around burial. Next time you're at a funeral, you, especially an Orthodox funeral, you'll know that we recite Yoshev Beset Elyon, the 91st Psalm, at a burial, and that there's a peculiar custom that is done when the casket is brought to the grave. There's a cessation of the procession 7 times, each time around one of the words in that verse, Ki Malachav Yitzav Lecha. Okay. And it has to do, in my opinion, it's totally superstition. And it totally has to do, Bob, you'll like this, it has to do with Kabbalah. It has to do with the fact that this is perhaps why I don't do it, because it's too superstitious, okay? But there's a deep superstitious reason for stopping 7 times, and it has to do with the Talmudic legend in the Zohar, the origins of demons in sexual intercourse between humans and demonic powers. Okay? Some demons, like Lilith, were created during the 6 days of creation, and in particular on the Sabbath eve at twilight, as disembodied spirits. They sought to take on the form of a body through association with humans, at first with Adam when he separated from Eve, and then with all his descendants. However, the demons who were created out of such unions also long for this kind of intercourse. The sexual element in the relationship of man and demons holds a prominent place in the demonology of the Zohar, as well as that of several later Kabbalistic works. Every pollution of semen gives birth to demons. The details of these relationships are remarkably similar to the beliefs in current Christian medieval demonology, but succubi and incubi, they're based on the assumption that these demons have no procreating ability of their own and need the human semen in order to multiply. In the later Kabbalah, it is pointed out that demons born to man out of such unions are considered his illegitimate sons. They were called Banim Shovavim. At death and burial, they come to accompany the dead man, to lament him, and to claim their share of inheritance. They may also injure the legitimate sons, hence the custom of circling the dead at the cemetery to repulse the demons, and also the custom in a number of communities not allowing the sons to accompany their father's corpse to the cemetery to prevent them being harmed by their illegitimate stepbrothers. Okay, so it's funny how contemporary guides to mourning kind of purge all of this out of their publications. Okay, it's hysterical. I go to Chabad.org and you'll see, it's important to stop 7 times on the way to the grave, but it has to do only with the Kabbalah, only with the idea that a man in his life, brought into the world some demons, unfortunately, and therefore you're calling attention, and that as the body is brought to the grave, you are surrounded by these demons and you are exerting control over that realm of existence. Okay, well, I don't want to say that that's absurd, other than to say we live in a thick soup of life and of belief and of superstitions and of things that have been kind of layered onto us like sediment in an archaeological dig. We have all of this, we're not aware of this when we're doing this, and I certainly don't call attention to this. Go ahead, Bob. Rebuttal.
No, not a rebuttal at all. It's actually a sort of different question which I've been wrestling with, which is the positioning of the text you chose today to follow the myriad of laws and do not boil a kid in its mother's milk.
Yes.
And I'm wondering whether the rabbis or yourself have thoughts about why is this appearing right here. To me, just as a quick thing, is so much of what was said before is so difficult to digest in one gulp that in many ways creating the idea of the angel or the messenger symbolizes metaphorically, remember, it's going to take you a while to start to learn all these different laws and everything, but this sort of pulls it together as a bit of a capstone that maybe people can grasp. And the only reason I say that is that in beginning to delve into some Hasidic perspectives on some of these Mishpatim, I was blown away by one which talked about the donkey that is bearing its heavy weight, and the person is of an enemy, and should you help them? And the analysis from the Baal Shem Tov was that the donkey was actually oneself, one's own physicality, and that all of these mishpatim have almost a psychological, sociological piece to it that one can refer to one's own life. And it was a compelling discussion for that and almost every single other law beyond all the secular important civil stuff, not only for people, but for the Sanhedrin.
No, of course, and once again, it's a question of where we take these things, and they can all become deeply symbolized for the kinds of meaning that the Hasidic tradition extracted from there, especially on that law. What is the connection between this and that? Other than this, in my opinion, this represents something deep and probably very ancient, and that since we are at a moment prior to moving on. Of course, in the next several weeks we're going to be dealing with the Mishkan, the creating of the tabernacle, etc. But But if we're just frozen in this frame of time, the people are standing at Sinai, they're getting their laws, they're getting instructions for how to go forward so that they will go forward. And so in their mind, it's like, the child who says, when are we going to get there? When are we going to get there? We've stopped. Okay, now we got to go. So there is a certain anticipation that there's a journey ahead and that the journey is being accompanied. Now it also figures into the fact that when, that there's a major event that's going to happen here that spoiler, the people don't know, but we certainly know that it's going to happen, which is Moses is going to be, up on the mountain. He's going to take his time, and the people are going to get nervous, and they're going to build the golden calf, and that it means that they won't, because of the golden calf experience. There is a withdrawal. That is, God Himself is not going to lead. God, it has to be something other than that, and that seems to be part of this. That is to say, there is, the affront to God was so deep at the golden calf that God Himself is not going to lead, but this malach is going to lead, and that's how it takes place. But of course, the tradition, is confused about this, and will interpret many things out of this, including what we said before, that the malach was in fact Moses. And we'll go on to superstitions, and of course that there is a hint to the superstitious and I just compiled some collections here. What are some of the common superstitions that people live with? Don't sit at the corner of the table. I don't know if you have this. Don't step over someone. Never leave your purse on the floor. I never heard that. Spit 3 times. That, of course, we know. Don't take a direct path home from the cemetery. Yes, that we know. I've never heard of this one. Bring jam to a housewarming party. Never heard of that one. Only bring an even number of five. Never heard of that one. Wear a metal pin on clothes while embarking on a trip. Okay. Never hand the knife directly to another person. That we know. Close open books. Always make sure you close your books. Okay. Here I want to just share with you this one here. You'll love this. This is very sweet. I found this on the web and a YouTube here. Lovely moment. Yiddish with subtitles. It's gonna just a second, 1 second. Okay, back to sharing.
My Mama is gewesen, wie man sagt in Englisch, superstitious. So hat gehabt groß Mäuler für Gitarrik. Und so hat gehabt verschiedene Wörter, wo sie ran in unser Familienleben. Eins, was alle Kinder und eigentlich schon kennen, ist, man tun nicht singen in der Früh. Als du singst in der Früh, ist du weinen bei der Nacht. Die andere Sache, was ich gedenke, was für meine Mama, was die Kinder haben auch das gelernt, ist ein Tisch, ist zu stellen Essen und zu legen weg Bücher. Nicht. Wir tun ist, sich wegsetzen auf einen Tisch. Ein jüdisches Kind, keinmal nicht. Tu nicht. Eine andere Sache, was ich gedenke für meine Mama, wo die Kinder auch hat, das ist nicht so, das ist nicht superstitious, das ist, wie man sagt, wie man fühlt sich bei jedem. Meine Mama hat mir nicht gelassen, reingehen in Socken. Pulvers oder mit Schier, aber nicht in Socken, verwusst nicht, weil als begeht in Socken ist man ein Oval. Aber es tut Zeiten, wenn du es mitnehmen.
Very sweet, and I have strong recollections of being told not to go in socks in certain homes. Put your shoes on, and I have to say, where was I recently? Where people took their socks off. Oh, it was a recent shiva, and everybody. It was wet outside. That's why people had to take their shoes off. So I walked in with Kim, and she said, "Are we supposed to take our shoes off?" I said, "I'm not taking my shoes off." And she said, "Why not?" I said, "Because you're going to be an avel. You have to be." And I'm speaking as a rational person with a brain, with a sense of humor, but understanding that if you take your shoes off in a shiva house, you are identified as the mourner, and that's a superstition, and you don't want to be a mourner, and you don't want to tempt the evil eye. Okay, so here I am, a Maimonidean or whatever, and saying I humor. It's humor, but it's also part of our world. Okay, and I have dozens of these examples of customs that were done. And my mother's here, and of course we can remember, my late grandmother, who upon returning from a cemetery used to ask for water, not only to do the washing, okay, but to wash the whole threshold of the stoop. Okay, you poured the water over the threshold so that you wouldn't bring the demons from the graveyard, from the cemetery, into the home. So a lot of our superstitions do involve death, because death, of course, is the great uh, mystery of life. And you could think of dozens of. I remember once, it stuck in my mind. So I was a young student. I was being a kolbo chazan in a synagogue in Kitchener, Ontario, and I wore a kittel and I wore a red tie. Okay, and an older Jewish man came up to me and said, "Nicht aroit, nicht aroit. You can't wear a red tie. You can't wear." And I go, "Why?" He says, "Aroit, da, 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 some reason, whatever." And I always remember it. And of course, have a number of red ties in my collection, but every time I put it on, I go, "Ah, nicht aroit. I can't wear a red tie to shul, that kind of thing." And people have all sorts of things that are connected to, because we live in a world in which these kinds of fears and these kinds of sentiments are really not far from all of us. We all live certainly in a culture that, as rational as we could think ourselves of, each one of us has our own private superstitious activities, and speak to all of that. I'm going to just have some things to conclude with. So, Malach, angelic or emissary, we have army captain, and we have a reference in Joshua. Was it, the Maimonides, a prophet? Like it wasn't an actual angel; it was a prophet like Moses. Could have been the cloud. Could have been God's here. It's maybe, and here is William Propp, the biblical scholar, who said the simplest answer is a dodge. God is deliberately Delphic here. God is being ambiguous and obscure, while reassuring the people that, come what may, he will not. He will not abandon them. The deity keeps option open. He does not specify the form of his guiding messenger, whether human or divine. He promises only that the divine name will be in him, and that's the point. The point is that this, the text that began the whole discussion is, I'm bringing my messenger. My messenger will be the one that has my name. So he says, at the end of the thing, what's the exact word? לא תהיה משכנתה, לא תהיה שנה, מעט תהיה שנה. כי אתן בידכם את השנה. I can't find the verse. Okay, well, so it's the malach is the one that has God's name, and that kind of encapsulates a certain sentiment. Even finds itself into folklore. The golem of Prague, for example, is the individual that the Maharal, the legendary figure, places the name into this glob of clay and animates the clay, and therefore that's what becomes the protector. Okay, we have a final. Does the Torah have its own angel, or is the Torah also a messenger? It's a great question in the sense that once you give talismanic aura to objects, the Torah itself becomes the most exemplary talisman. And this is reflected in the way that we interact with it as an object. So when the Torah is passed around or brought through the congregation, people will show reverence to it. They will place something on it and kiss it, or offer other forms of reverence to it. And certainly, if something happens to the Torah, it will augur many ill tidings for a community. If a Torah falls out of an ark, for example, we will fast for it, because rationally it's a scroll that falls to the ground, but it's a catastrophe when that happens. It is catastrophized precisely because of the talismanic aura around it. We don't want to have the thing that kind of condenses in it the greatest holiness that we could perceive being defiled in any way, and that therefore becomes an extension of defiling the community, for which there is acts of repair that need to be done, namely fasting and repentance. John, go ahead. Repeat. Open. Yeah.
This discussion of superstition just led me to think of Peretz's great little essay about the golem, but he was kind of had a humorous take on it. Maybe he was making fun of it. It was sad, but after the golem destroys all the Gentiles, he said, "Who's going to be the Shabbos goy? Who's going to do that?" And the sad thing at the end of this I think it's only 2 paragraphs. No one remembers the name of God, and the last words in this great story is, "What are we going to do now?"
Yeah. I think certainly Peretz was trying to ask these questions. We are living in a rational world where all of these things are present. These demons and these. And of course, charlatans who use these demons and who try to manipulate them, and he's asking that question also. Bashevis Singer, in his novels and short stories, will often have dibbuks and imps and ghosts and demons and all sorts of things. It's hard to read when you don't come out of that world and you're not connected to that. And all you need to do really to understand is to kind of tiptoe into that world and understand that world was filled with superstitions and filled with demons and filled with all sorts of folk ideas and beliefs, and they come to the fore because of human need. Human beings invent these things because life is so terrifying and beyond our control. And we invent it, we imagine it. Stanley, go ahead.
Well, it follows very well from what you're just saying. It's because it's in many ways beyond our control that we contrive of ways to control it. Absolutely. That again gives us some psychological comfort, as if this will work to control something that we can't control.
Exactly. Go ahead, Alana.
I don't believe in superstition,
It's not.
but this is hanging on my grandchildren.
There you go. Sorry.
My granddaughter is 18. This is 18 years old at least from Jerusalem,
Yes.
and it's hanging on her bed when she comes to my house.
There you go. Okay. But you've let it be in your house. So therefore, you're a kind grandmother.
It can hurt. It cannot hurt.
There you go. That's what we all say. We all do these things. We live, in a world that is blanketed by some of these things. For some of us more than others, and they provide comfort, and they provide, I think, a sense of stability in a world that's chaotic, a world that's uncontrollable, and it gives us, the island of certainty in the ocean of chaos, which is really one of the great themes of all religious life. Okay. With that, we will bring our conversation to a conclusion today.